Good morning, everybody. It's good to see all of you today on this beautiful summer day. This is our last installment of the Deep End series. How many of you have enjoyed the Deep End? It's all about faith. Listen, y'all are faith people, and we're talking about the deep end of the pool. We're talking about launching out into deeper water. And so today we are going to talk about a story. I'm not going to give it away just yet, but I want to give you a little backstory on what was going on with Jesus at this time. Jesus had just found out that his cousin and probably one of his very best friends, John the Baptist, had been killed, had been beheaded. And so Jesus wanted to go someplace and be by himself. I'm sure it was to grieve. You have to understand that this was not an ordinary relationship. Jesus was in the world and he had a mission. He was the Son of God and probably the only other person living on the earth at that time who understood Jesus and understood who he was and what his mission was John the Baptist. And he had just lost John the Baptist, his cousin, his friend. And I'm sure it was a loneliness, much like maybe losing a spouse. There was a connection there. They understood each other. And to be suddenly alone in the world, you understand what I'm saying? Alone in that mission, knowing that there's no other person now alive who understands you and what you're all about. And so that had happened, and so Jesus went away to a solitary place, a remote place to pray, but the crowds found him there. And they began to come in droves, and I mean thousands and thousands of people came. And they found Jesus, and Jesus saw the multitude of people there. And now we're talking about 15 to 20,000 people that found Jesus. And he had compassion on them, and they had brought their sick to him to be healed. And so instead of going away to grieve and to pray and to be quiet and to be by himself, now Jesus, because of the compassion that he had for the people, he had to go to work. And so he went to work and he began to heal the people. And so all day long, Jesus worked and ministered. Do you know that ministry is work? Ministry is work. And so Jesus ministered to these people. He talked to them. He healed them, healed all of the sick. And in the afternoon, the disciples came to him and they said, Jesus, we're in the middle of nowhere. We need to send these people off to the villages in the vicinity and let them get something to eat so that they can go and buy something to eat. And Jesus said, you give them something to eat. They said, all we have are some loaves and fish. And he said, bring them to me. 5 loaves, 2 fish. You know the story. Jesus blessed the food, gave it back to the disciples, and he said, give them something to eat. So they began to distribute these 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, to upwards of 15 to 20,000 people. That's a lot of people for 5 loaves and 2 fish. So what these disciples were seeing was that through their own hands, a miracle was happening. Through their own hands. Jesus was the power behind the miracle. But it was them. they were giving the food to the people. And when it was over, when everybody had finished eating, they gathered 12 baskets of scraps. An amazing miracle. One of the amazing things about this miracle is that the next chapter in Matthew, it happens again. And he feeds 4,000 this time. He feeds the 5,000, then he feeds the 4,000. So the first time he feeds close to 20,000 people. The reason I'm saying that is because the scripture says, in both cases, it was 5,000 men, not counting, and the scripture says, not counting the women and the children. So when you factor in the women and the children, there had to be more women than men because women are what make the church, right? I mean, we wouldn't have Christianity, we wouldn't have church, we wouldn't have Christian programs if it weren't for the women. The women are the drivers. The men may be the leaders. This is not according to God. This is according to Rob, okay? I just have to tell you, it's the women that make it work. It's the women that are the driving force. So there had to be a lot of women there. That's the point, okay? And then their children. They can't leave their children at home. So most estimates are like 20,000 people were there. Well, after he had fed them, these people were so grateful, so impressed with two things about Jesus. They were impressed with his heart, his goodness, that he would heal them all day long. It takes a long time to get through 20,000 people. It takes a long time to touch that many people. And Jesus wore himself out healing those people. And then they saw the power. They saw the power not only of the healing, they saw the power of the loaves and the fishes and that multiplying miracle. And it impressed them so that they began to talk about making him a king. And in John it says that they were forcing him to become a king. And so that's where we pick up the story. Jesus sent his disciples across the Sea of Galilee. And it says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side. While he dismissed the crowds, he thought he thought that it would be better to have the disciples leave. He did not want them involved in this, and so he sent them away. And he dealt with the people, dismissing the people on his own. That's exactly what happened. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. So finally, after hearing the news about his friend and cousin, John the Baptist, and his partner in ministry, John the Baptist, the one who came to make the way, to prepare the way for Christ, he goes up on the mountain to pray. And it's just Jesus and the Father. We don't know what happened on the mountain, but we'll get to maybe some assumptions a little bit later about that. But while he was on the mountain, Scripture says the boat by this time was a long way from the land. And John says that it was 3 or 4 miles. Most likely he was crossing the Sea of Galilee, and the boat was probably maybe halfway across the sea going to the other side. So running north to south, the sea is longer than it is wide, and most likely they were going through the narrowest part, which was still several miles, 7, 8, 9 miles wide. But the boat by this time was a long way from land, beaten by the waves, so the wind was against them. I think in Mark it says that they were rowing against the wind. They could not move because they were rowing against the wind. Have you ever felt like you were in a situation and you just couldn't get anywhere? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. It feels like we have these things like, it feels like I'm beating my head against the wall. You know that? You know that feeling? You're rowing. You can't get anywhere. You don't feel like you're in the right place, but you just can't move. You're just stuck and you're rowing, you're spending your energy, but you're not getting anywhere. You know that feeling, right? That's the way the disciples felt. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. And the first thing that I always see about this is, that catches my attention, is that they believed in ghosts. They believe in ghosts. I can't think of any time that I've said, "Oh, it's a ghost," But they believed in ghosts. And I'll tell you, one account says that he was walking across the water, and he was walking as if he would have just gone past them on the water, and he heard them cry out, in fear, and he answered them. But imagine how that would look. You're seeing this person, you're in the middle of the sea, and you see this person walking, and he's not even coming towards, he's not coming towards you saying, "Hey, I'm Jesus. Hey, guys." No, he's not doing that. He's just walking out there, like he's going to walk on by. That'd be like clowns to me, That's clown kind of scary. And they cried out in fear. So this brings us to the title of today's message. What was the title of last week's message? When Jesus, no. When God gets in your boat. When God is in your boat. Remember that? Some of you Christians remember last week about what it's like when God gets in your boat. So today's message is kind of the opposite of that. When God is not in the boat. When God is not in the boat. Last week we talked about the storm that came up on the Sea of Galilee, just like this one. The wind was blowing, and it came up suddenly, and the waves were so high that they were going into the boat, filling up the boat, and Jesus was asleep on the cushion in the back of the boat, and they woke Jesus up, and he calmed the storm. It's good to have Jesus in your boat. It's good to have Jesus in your boat. But what happens when God is not in the boat anymore? I'm not talking about he's not in you. I'm talking about, when I say boat, I'm talking about your situation. What happens when God is not in the boat anymore? This is what God does. God moves so that we will move. He moves so that we will move. I had a dream when I was younger. This was my heart's desire. It was my dream, and that was to become a contemporary worship leader. And I wanted to do that at the church where we were. We were at a mega church in Montgomery, and so I auditioned for the job. I thought that I would get the job, but I didn't get the job. And I was very disappointed. And God had something different for me. And so he called me to speak. And he told me, he said, "I've called you to speak." And so I talked to the person who was the head of our Sunday school class, who was the teacher of our Sunday school class, which was where Lene worked. She worked in the church as a young singles pastor. And so long story short, he turned that class over to me. I was not expecting that at all. I was just talking to him as a person who would give me wise counsel. And it was an answer, he said, to his prayer. And so he turned that class over to me. And that's when I started to speak in front of people. And so God had plans for me then. But my heart's desire was not to speak. My heart's desire was to lead worship. And so I got a call from John Tanner, pastor at Cove Church here in Hampton Cove, southeast Huntsville. And he wanted me to come and audition. He'd heard a CD that Lene and I did, and he wanted me to come and interview and audition for the job at that church. And I came, and I got the job, and we moved up here from Montgomery. We moved here, and I was there for 15 years. And I want to tell you, I had a lot of fun doing that. It was a lot of fun. Didn't have to worry about a lot of church stuff. I really just had to worry about my team of musicians that I love. I love musicians and tech people and singers and all the people that were on my volunteer team. We had a volunteer team toward the end there of like 100 people. So, and there was a staff of several people that worked for me in my department. Man, I was having the time of my life, and Jesus was in the boat. You know what I mean? I felt like everything is good. Even if a storm comes up, Jesus is in the boat. I mean, it was a comfortable place to be. And then it became uncomfortable. It became uncomfortable. I can't explain it except that God had left the boat. I didn't feel God there anymore. And I began to pray. And this was 10, 11 years ago. I began to pray. And God spoke to me one day when I was watching a sermon on television. He spoke to me one day. He said, I want you to plant a church. And I said, when? And he said, now. And I said, like right now? And he said, now. And then I prayed. I said, now, I just heard a sermon about red lights and yellow lights and green lights. Is this a yellow light? Or is this a green light? And he said, it's a green light. And so every time, I really didn't pray about it much because I knew what the answer was always going to be, and it was always going to be now. And I asked the Lord. I would go to the church early in the morning before anybody else was there, and I would go into the worship center, and I would sit there by myself as the sun came up, and I would say, God, when do you want me to plant the church? And he would say, now. And I would say, do you want me to quit my job? Yes. I want you to quit your job. Yes, I want you to plant the church. Yes, I want you to do it now. And then we invited some friends of ours over for dinner one night. It's Bruce and Marlena Martin. I don't know if any of y'all know them, but Bruce is an awesome guy, awesome speaker, and author, and anyway, they came over, and that night he left, and when he left me with some prophetic words. He spoke some things over my life, and it encouraged me, and I didn't tell him what God was saying to me, but that night I remember sitting in my chair in my living room, and by the way, I miss my chair in my living room. Nobody else in the family misses it, but I miss my chair in my living room, in my little house, and my little back porch. I miss all of that. And so God spoke to me that night, and he said, I want to move you. And I like that. I like that because I was restless. I was frustrated. I knew that I needed something new, and I was ready to move across the country if that were the case. Only I had one problem. I had convinced my parents several years before to move up here to Huntsville, and I couldn't leave my parents, but I thought maybe he wants to move me to another church. Maybe he wants to move me in some way, but I'm ready to move, Lord. I'm ready to move. And God was ready for me to move, and he said, I want to move you. And I thought that what he was saying is, I want to move you, I want to change your location. But he was not saying, I want to change your location. What he was really saying is, I want to move you in here. I want to move you. I want to move you. You cannot stay where you are. You have to move. And this is what happened. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them saying, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. If it is you. You know this thing that happens sometimes? We say, if, Lord, if you want this certain thing, then show me this way. You know that? Well, I just kept praying about this. 2 years, 3 years went by, 4 years. I kept praying, Lord, do you really want me to start this church? Yes. When do you want me to start it? I want you to start it now. I want to move you. Every time I would pray, I want to move you. I know you want to move me. None of this makes any sense to me, Lord. Please show me the way. I have no idea what to do. And it was just always the same thing. Yes, I want to move you. Yes, I want you to plant the church. Yes, I want you to do it now. And all of those things happened. And I prayed and prayed and prayed. And one night, this is when I made a decision. And this is when I began to act. This is when I began to move. I had already had a dream where God spoke the name of the church to me, the Net. I, by some miracle, was able to secure the domain name, thenet.org. I had another dream where a messenger from God came to me in the dream and told me where to plant the church, and it was not the Stone Center, it was not Campus 805, but it was here in this entertainment district. And even one day when Lene and I were headed down south to Montgomery, instead of getting off on Memorial and going that way to 565, we cut straight through Governors, and they were renovating this building, and I saw the crosses on the front of the building out here. There are lines, and they look like crosses to me. And I saw them renovating this building, and I said to Lene, I said, what if the Net is supposed to be in that building? And she just, ha, that's so funny. You're dreaming. And so all that had happened, but I said to the Lord, I gave him an if-then. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was agonizing over this whole thing. I was comfortable where I was, but I knew God wanted me to move. And I leaned over on the floor. I was kneeling down on the floor, and I leaned over the footrest, and I prayed, and I said, Lord, if you really want me to quit my job and plant a church, then I just need one more word from you. Just one more word. If you'll just give me one more word, I will act. And he spoke to me, and it was this quick. It was quick, and this is what he spoke to me exactly. He said, where is your future? And I knew that it was not back there. I knew that it was not where I was. I knew that it was not where I was coming from. I knew that my future was ahead of me, and I knew that my future was in the words that God had spoken to me. And so I said, okay. And so I went to bed about 2:30. I got up about 5 or 6, and I got dressed, and I went in to work. And I was taking some time off, so I wasn't supposed to be going in. And Lene said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to quit my job. And she said, whoa, wait, hold on a minute. And she said, are you sure? She was aware of all the stuff that was going on. She said, are you sure? I said, I'm absolutely positive. And she said, okay. So I went and I quit my job that day, and I announced to the church that we were going to plant a new church, and everybody was happy, and it was a good day, and all of that until the doubting started. So Jesus said to Peter, he said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. Now, this is the main thing. Every sermon I've ever heard about Jesus walking on water and Peter getting out of the boat has focused on the wrong thing. And the wrong thing is that Peter fell and that he needed Jesus to pull him back up. And all these sermons, they have titles like, keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your focus on God. Don't lose your focus. It's all the wrong thing. But of course he fell. Of course he did. Of course we fall. Of course we doubt. That's a given. The main thing is that he walked on the water. And how did he walk on the water? Because he believed. He walked on the water. Neil Armstrong walked on the moon in the 20th century, but in the first century, Peter walked on water. You understand? That's the main thing. He walked on water. And when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." This is just a day in the life of a Christian. When we begin to see the things around us that make us afraid, we begin to sink. Don't ever stop saying, "Lord, save me." When you begin to sink, "Lord, save me. Lord, save me." How many times have I said, "Lord, save me"? How many times have I doubted? I'm telling you, that's not a bad thing. Of course, we can't do it without Jesus. Of course, we're going to need him to pick us up and pull us out. And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" This word is only used twice in the Bible. It's called distazo. It means uncertainty about which way to go. You can see Peter, with this doubt going on in his mind. Should I go forward to Jesus, or should I go back to the boat? Should I reach forward or should I reach back? Should I reach forward or back? That's the question that many of us need to ask ourselves. Are we reaching forward or are we reaching back? Are we reaching forward to something that's very scary that could be the most amazing and most wonderful thing? I tell Lene, men don't use the word wonderful, but I'm using it today, okay? The most wonderful thing could be ahead of you, but should you hold on to what is secure or should you go forward? And this is exactly what happened to Peter. It's also used when Jesus gave the Great Commission to the 11. It said that they all believed, most of them believed, but some doubted. And those ones that doubted, I'm sure they were asking themselves the same things that the signers of the Declaration of Independence were thinking. If I sign this, I'm signing my death warrant. If this doesn't work out, I'm dead. And I'm sure that's what they were thinking. Should I go forward with Christ or should I go back to what is safe? So, I think this is funny. Jesus and Peter are having a conversation out on the water. They're talking. They're not just like, let's get to the boat quick before we both sink. No, they are having a conversation on the water. Why did you doubt? Why were you uncertain about which way to go? And so when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Well, there was a time, and I'm telling this story today. I debated about telling it because I know many of you have heard it already. But there's so many new people, and I get asked this question a lot. So I'm telling the story again today. But, I made the announcement. Everybody was happy. I had a plan about how to raise money to get the church started. And my plan did not work. You ever had a plan that didn't work? I was really counting on that. I was really counting on this working. It's not like I didn't pray. I prayed. I thought I was doing what God wanted me to do, but it didn't work. And 3 weeks away from the launch, I had been over to a meeting across the mountain. Then I was coming back to my house for a meeting with 3 people that were, like core members of the team, startup team. And I was coming over the mountain, and this is what I said: Lord, I am so sorry. I have made a big mistake. I thought I was hearing your voice, and obviously I got it wrong. I've done what I thought, this voice in my head, what I was hearing, what I thought I was hearing, but evidently, I'm not trying to manipulate God here. I'm just being honest with him. Here I was, so foolish, Lord. I was foolish enough to think that I was hearing from God, and I told people that I was hearing from God, and here I am, and I'm realizing now I didn't hear from God at all. All the plans are falling through because my plan didn't work. I wanted to raise money by getting people together and giving them information and asking them if they felt strongly about this to donate. And here I am. None of that has worked. People didn't show up. People didn't come. People didn't commit. And so I got it wrong. I know you didn't get it wrong, Lord, but I got it wrong. And so now I'm going to go home to where I'm going to meet these 3 people, and I'm going to tell them that I got it wrong and that this is not going to happen. It's not happening. And so I'm bummed. I'm in doubt. You understand? I'm doubting. I'm thinking, man, I'm out here in the middle, and I don't know whether I can go forward. I don't think I can go forward, and I know I can't go back. And what do I do? I'm completely in doubt, and I'm saying, this is what I'm saying coming across the mountain. Jesus, save me. Save me from this. I've made a mess of it. Save me. And I get to the meeting, and I began to say, that it hasn't worked. I didn't want to just say the whole thing is off, because there were people, including Lene, we were all excited about the new church. And so I said, it's just not working, we're going to have to either put it off or not do it or something like that. And the first person said, we were trying to raise $40,000. First person said, I'll give 10. I'll give 10. And I was like, oh, you'll give 10? I said, if you'll give 10, I'll give 10. Because we had some money saved. And I said, I'll give 10. If you'll give 10, I'll give 10. That's half of it. The third person said, the first thing this person said was, I'll take care of the rest. And I thought, okay, we got it. This person took out their checkbook, wrote a check, and passed it across to me, and it was $40,000. $40,000. And the church was on. It was on. I was so happy coming out of that meeting. And then all of a sudden I realized that God had been speaking to me. I had doubted, but God never doubted. God was speaking to me. And it was so much like this whole story of Jesus walking on water. It was so much like Peter saying, I'll go, I'll get out of the boat, I'll go. It was so much like that. And it was scary, but it was exciting. And I began to think, man, is it always going to be like this? I mean, do I have to go through this every time? I mean, that's a lot of emotional energy. There's so much going on here. I don't know if I want to live the rest of my life, on the edge, not knowing if what you think God is telling you is going to happen. And man, this was a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do that. Well, it gets better. It's not always going to be like that. It isn't always this way. It gets better. James, the brother of Jesus, said, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." The testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance is not doubt. Perseverance is not lack of faith. Perseverance is like, this has happened 100 times before. We're just gonna trust God, and we're gonna do what God wants us to do, and we're just gonna trust Him. And so perseverance is a wonderful, there it goes again. There I go again. It's a beautiful thing, perseverance. You just keep getting up. You just keep saying, "Lord, save me." Jesus just keeps pulling you up over and over and over and over again. Perseverance. It's like, I use this analogy a lot because I really love it. It's like digging a well. You just dig and dig and dig and dig and no water. You dig some more, and the next day you get up and you dig again. You dig again the next day and the next day, and you just keep shoveling, and you just keep filling up the bucket, and you just keep moving. Day after day after day, you just keep doing it, and then one day you hit water. You hit the water table. And after that, the well starts giving back to you. And every day you go to that well, and there it is, the water. The water comes. It comes over and over, day after day after day. Life-giving, life-sustaining water. And that's the way it is with God. We just continue to believe. We continue to persevere. He said, "Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature." Would you like to be mature? Man, I want to be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Wisdom. Wisdom. Sometimes you don't get the answers that you want, but you get wisdom. Sometimes you have to give up on some of the things that you think you want because you gain wisdom from God. But God gives wisdom, and He gives it generously without finding fault. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a wonderful thing that God does for us? But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave. Here we got the sea metaphor again. Like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. When you ask, you must believe and don't doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave tossed to and fro, tossed back and forth on the sea. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. Now, he's not saying that if you're double-minded and unstable, and that if you doubt, he's not saying that you're not saved. He's not saying that you're not a Christian anymore. He's not saying there's no hope for you. He's just saying that you're not there yet. He said that person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. If you are always doubting, if you're always wondering, should I do this or should I do that, and not just saying yes to Jesus, if you're always in doubt, you shouldn't expect to receive things from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded. When I started out as a Christian, I was very double-minded. When I met Lene, she asked me what I thought about her, and I said, "I think you're double-minded." And it's true. And she said, "Really? You think I'm double-minded?" I said, "I think so. I think you're double-minded, but I'm double-minded too, so I'm not sure." But you don't have to remain double-minded. You just keep going through the process. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You never give up. That's a good thing about Christianity. That's a good thing about the Spirit of Christ that lives in us. He never gives up. I mean, He just doesn't give up. I am amazed in my own life how God has worked that to the point that I can't really give up on anybody. I just keep on continue with relationships. I'm not saying I never give up on any relationship, but I'm saying that that's just the nature of Christ. You don't give up. When God tells you to do something, I just keep doing it until at some point success comes. I want to give you another perspective, because there is another perspective. When we read the story, we're always putting ourselves like in the position of maybe somebody in the boat. What would it be like to see Jesus come walk on the water if you're in the boat? And we even, some of us think about what it would be like to be Peter and step out of the boat and walk on the water. What was that like? But none of us ever thinks about what it would be like to be Jesus. Do we? You ever thought, I wonder what it was like to be Jesus and come walking on the water? But Jesus said this to the man whose son was possessed by a demon. He said this. He said, if you can, Jesus said, everything is possible for the one who believes. What is possible? Everything. Everything is possible for the one who believes. Everything is possible for the one who believes. So Jesus was up on the mountain. And it was the first watch. This is between 6 and 9. It's the first watch. He's climbing up the mountain. He wants to be alone with his Father. We can speculate on what he did. Maybe he grieved some. Maybe he wept for John. Maybe he wept that he was alone in his mission in the world. Talked to the Father. I didn't know it was going to be like this, Father. It feels different than what I was thinking. He prays for a few hours, and maybe he goes to sleep. Maybe he gets some sleep, gets some rest. He deserves it. He's been working nonstop. And then comes the third watch, 12 to 3. Somewhere along in there, he woke up or became aware that the disciples were having a hard time. And Jesus, he said, I can do nothing of myself. I can only do those things which I see the Father do. So Jesus is continually consulting the Father. What is it that you're doing, Father? What is it that I'm supposed to participate in now? And at some point, the Father said, you got to go get them. They're out there on the sea. You got to walk on water. Maybe it was Jesus' first time walking on water. But Jesus knows that everything is possible for those who believe. He knew that. And by the way, there are 3 miracles that happened that night. So Jesus walked on the water, Peter walked on the water, and then there was another miracle that happened. So Jesus, he starts walking on the water. And the wind is, you have to remember, this is not like walking just on the top of smooth water. He's walking in a storm. The sea, the waves were way up and way down. One of the words used was like, implying that he floated across the water. One of the words in one of the accounts was like he floated across the water. And then there was the word that says that he was walking on the water. So he walks out to them on the water. Now they are several miles out. That's a long walk. It's a long walk. He walks out on the water, and then he knows that he's got to rescue these guys, but then he encounters Peter. Peter says, is that you? If that is you, let me come out on the water. Don't you know this thrilled Jesus? Come on. Come on. I'm waiting for somebody to get what I get. I'm waiting for somebody to know what I know, to experience what I experience. And that is that with faith, you can do anything. You can do anything. And so he's thrilled. And even though Peter sank, Jesus is not saying, you sorry thing, you came out here on this water and now here you are doubting and sinking. That's not what he's thinking. That's not what he's saying. He's thinking, oh my gosh, oh my God, oh my me. Oh me, oh me. Look at this guy. Look at this guy walking on water with me. He's walking on the water with me. And then they get back in the boat, and all of a sudden, they're not in the middle of the sea anymore. They're all the way across to their destination. Let me tell you something. This is important. You might think, I got a long, long way to go. God calls you to do something, and you think, how can I do that? How can I lead this? How can I lead that? How can I speak about this? How can I tell my testimony? How could I sing that song? How could I do whatever? How can I give this much? You know, how can I do that? And before you know it, you find yourself just taking a step or two by faith, and all of a sudden, boom, you're all the way across the sea. As soon as Jesus stepped in the boat, they were on the other side. Wow. He'll take you farther than you want to go, and he'll take you there quicker than you think he can take you there. He just needs somebody who doesn't doubt, but believes in their heart. And not just belief, the kind that you sit around and ponder and think about like I did for 3 or 4 years. No, it's the kind that actually takes the step out on the water. So here's what I want to leave you with. This is what I want to say to you. No matter what it is that God has called you to do, no matter what it is that God has impressed on your heart, no matter what your heart's desire is, no matter what it is that you think you can't do, no matter what it is that has stood in your way, no matter what the problem is, I just want to tell you, whatever it takes, if it takes writing all the scriptures about faith down in your journal and reading those things every day. God performed a miracle one time when there was something I wanted, and I wrote these scriptures down, and I got up every morning and I read those scriptures and I recited those scriptures and I learned those things and I prayed and I said, if God is for me, who can be against me? And the thing that I wanted, God gave it to me, no problem. It was because of the faith. It was because of the action. And so whatever it is, whatever it takes, however many prayers it takes, however many steps it takes, however many times falling it takes, however many times you have to ask Jesus to help you up again, no matter what it takes, stay with it, persevere, do whatever it takes, and get that thing that God has ordained for your life. Can I get an amen or a, hey, I agree with that, something? And don't ever forget to do what Peter did. He cried out, Lord, save me. Let's just say that. Lord, save me. Come on, we can do better than that. Lord, save me. All right. Because you're going to need to know that. Lord, save me. Let's pray.